My sister shoved the wedding dress box back into my arms and told me my grandson wasn't welcome. For a second, all I could do was feel the edge of the cardboard biting into my palms. The box wobbled slightly from the force of her push, and I tightened my grip before it slipped. The afternoon light cut across the living room, catching on the gold lettering of her name printed on the lid, a name my grandson had traced gently with his fingertips just days ago, proud of how official it looked. Her words were still suspended in the air, sharp as broken glass. Not welcome. Not him. My throat tightened before any sound could come out. The warm scent of the fabric inside the box, satin mixed with a hint of lavender from my closet, felt almost mocking now. "He's 17, I finally whispered. 17, not 7. She crossed her arms, the gesture quick and defensive. "Underage is underage, no minors. We already decided that." The way she said we made something twist inside me. She hadn't spoken to me with that tone since we were teenagers, and she used to mimic the adults she thought were better than us. "There will be alcohol," she added, as if the word itself was a hammer meant to flatten any argument I had left. Behind me, I heard the faintest creak in the hallway. My grandson stopped just at the doorway, half hidden, the same way he always hovered when he sensed conflict brewing. He had a habit of shrinking when he got scared, not physically, but emotionally, like he folded inward to protect whatever soft part of himself might break. My sister's eyes flicked toward him, then away so fast it felt intentional. "He spent months making your dress," I said. "You asked him. You begged him, if I remember correctly." She tightened her jaw. "And I'm grateful, but the rule applies to everyone." "Everyone?" I let out a short breath. "He's the only minor in the entire family. It doesn't matter." The words hit harder than I expected. They weren't loud or cruel in tone, just plain, firm, final. Sometimes that kind of cold certainty stings worse than shouting. My grandson stepped one foot into the room, eyes wide, his fingers nervously rubbing the hem of his shirt. A piece of lilac thread clung to the fabric, left over from the last fitting he'd done with her. I had watched him pick that color with a care that felt almost reverent. I thought you wanted me there," he said softly. The tremor in his voice made my heart clench. She didn't respond with softness, not even a sigh. "I want an adult wedding," she said. "No exceptions." His breath hitched. I could hear it. A small, sharp sound. I placed the box on the table slowly, afraid that if I moved too quickly, everything inside me would spill out. The cardboard rasped softly against the wood, a sound too gentle for the moment unfolding. "You're telling him he can sew your dress," I said, "but he can't sit in the audience and watch you walk in it." She shrugged. An actual shrug. "It's not personal." My grandson's shoulders curled inward, like he was trying to hold himself together. The satin thread on his shirt fluttered when he exhaled. I wanted to reach for him, but I kept my hand steady on the table. If I touched him right then, I might have broken. "You don't get to call this not personal," I said. "You are excluding the person who made the most personal thing you'll wear in your life." Her face twisted briefly. Not guilt, not regret, but irritation. "Don't make this dramatic." The moment she said it, something inside me hardened. I could almost hear the shift, like a closet door slamming in my chest. "I'm not making anything," I said, "but you are." She lifted her purse, slung it over her shoulder. The metal buckle clicked against the leather with a hollow sound. "I have a seating chart to finalize. We're done arguing." "No," I said quietly. "We're not." My grandson flinched again at the tone, but I didn't soften it. Not this time. "If he isn't welcome," I said, "then the dress isn't either." Her eyes widened a fraction. For the first time, a crack in her confidence, a hairline fracture. But there. "You wouldn't," she breathed. "I would, and I am." A cold thread of silence stretched between us, the kind that cuts, not cushions. The afternoon light shifted across the room, darkening the edges of her face. She looked at me like I had betrayed her, when the betrayal had started long before she arrived at my house. From the hallway, my grandson's breath shook. He wiped at his cheek quickly, thinking I wouldn't see. My sister pointed at the box. "If you don't bring it to Mom's house by tomorrow, I'll figure something else out." "That's exactly what you'll have to do," I said. Her mouth twitched. She turned and walked out, her heels clicking sharp rhythms across the floor. The front door opened. But before it closed, she said one more thing, soft enough that only I could hear. "You're ruining my wedding." And then she was gone. The quiet that followed felt too big for the room. My grandson's footsteps approached slowly, hesitant, as if he wasn't sure he was allowed to breathe. "Grandma," he whispered, "what happens now?" I turned to him, feeling the weight of everything pressing against us, and realized the answer would change the shape of our family forever. "Now," I said, "we decide what we're willing to let go of and what we're not." The next day, the box sat on the dining table like a guest who refused to leave. I tried to ignore it while I made breakfast, but my eyes kept drifting back to the perfectly wrapped edges, the neat tape, the little gold sticker my sister insisted made things look luxurious. My grandson shuffled into the kitchen, hair mussed, shirt wrinkled, moving like he wasn't sure he was allowed to take up space. He glanced at the box and then away, as if it might burn him if he looked too long. "Morning," he murmured. "Morning," I replied. "Hungry?" He shrugged, but his hand was already on the fridge door, fingers curled around the handle like he needed something solid to hold on to. "I'm not really," he said, "but I'll eat." He took out the carton of eggs and set it on the counter. The soft thump of it landing sounded too loud in the quiet kitchen. I watched him crack one into the bowl, his movements careful, precise, the same way he handled needles and fabric. He didn't look at me. "Your aunt texted late last night," I said. His hand paused mid-air, shell between his fingers. "What did she say?" "That I'm ruining her wedding," I answered, "that I'm being unfair, that this is just how venues work." He dropped the shell into the trash with more force than necessary. "Did she say anything about me?" I hesitated. The truth and the desire to shield him collided in my chest. "She said you're making things complicated," I answered finally. "That's as close as she got to saying your name." He stared down into the bowl, the yellow yolk staring back at him like unblinking eyes. "That's one way to erase a person," he muttered. The phone buzzed on the counter. My mother, again. I put it on speaker before answering. I was done letting people talk about him like he wasn't in the room. "You still have the dress?" she asked. No greeting, just that clipped tone she used when she'd decided I was in the wrong. "Yes," I said. "And you still haven't given in?" "No," I repeated. She exhaled sharply. "You're being stubborn. She's in tears. Do you know that? She called me at midnight sobbing because her own sister is sabotaging the happiest day of her life over one teenager who can watch a video of the wedding later." My grandson flinched. "He's not a prop you can edit out and post," I said. "He's her nephew, the one who built the centerpiece of that day." "Oh, don't talk like that," she snapped. "The centerpiece is her love, her marriage, not some dress." "That's interesting," I said, "because yesterday she talked like nothing mattered more than that dress." My mother ignored that. "She told me you're holding it hostage unless she does what you want. Is that true?" I glanced at my grandson. He was whisking the eggs now, the metal fork scraping the bowl in nervous circles. "What I want," I said slowly, "is for her to treat him like a person, not a free tailor she can display and then discard." "You're twisting things as usual," my mother said. "No one is discarding him. He just won't attend one event. People get left out of things all the time. That's life." My grandson set the bowl on the counter a little too hard. Some of the eggs splashed up the side. "He worked for 5 months," I said. "Late nights, early mornings, every fitting, every change. She promised him he'd see it walk down the aisle." "He offered," my mother corrected. He enjoys this. It's his hobby. That doesn't make it free, I said, or painless to be cut out. Stop dramatizing, she said again, that word like a reflex. Just drop the dress off. She can't afford another one at this point. The wedding is in a week. She should have thought of that, I replied, before she decided her nephew was disposable. A long silence spread across the line. I could hear a TV in the background again, a game show audience clapping at something none of us cared about. Let me be clear, my mother finally said. If you ruin this for her, you're the one who will answer to the whole family, not her. They'll say you lost your mind over a dress and turned everyone against you. Is that what you want at your age? To end up alone over a tantrum? My grandson looked at me, eyes wide, like he was waiting to see if I'd crumble. I felt a slow burn rise in my chest. I'd rather stand alone, I said quietly, than stand with people who think this is acceptable. You're impossible, she muttered. I'm going to talk to her again. Maybe she can find someone else to reason with you. She hung up. The eggs had started to bubble in the pan. My grandson stirred them mechanically, the smell of cooking breakfast filling the kitchen like nothing unusual had happened. Maybe she's right, he said. I mean, not about you losing your mind, but about me watching a video later. Maybe that's enough. I don't want them hating you. They're choosing their side, I replied. I'm just not hiding mine. He flipped the eggs onto 2 plates and slid one toward me. If she really needs the dress, he said slowly, can't we just, I don't know, loan it? Like make it clear it's still mine? Or something? I studied his face. He was trying to find a compromise that would hurt least, willing to bend himself to make it easier for everyone else. It was a familiar posture. Do you want her to have it? I asked. He stared at his plate. The fork in his hand barely scratched the surface of the eggs. I wanted to see her in it, he said. Before, when I thought I mattered. Now? He shook his head. Now I don't know. It feels like giving my work to a stranger. The front doorbell rang. We looked at each other. I'll get it, I said. My knees ached a little as I walked down the hall, the house quiet except for the ticking of the clock and the distant hum of the fridge. When I opened the door, my sister was standing there, sunglasses on even though the sky was overcast, lips pressed in a tight line. Behind her, parked at the curb, was a sleek silver car I recognized from pictures, her fiancé's. We need to talk, she said, stepping past me into the house without waiting for an invitation. Her perfume hit me first, sharp, floral, too strong for this early. I closed the door and followed her into the living room. She stopped at the sight of the box on the dining table, her mouth tightening. So it's true, she said. You still have it. Of course I still have it, I replied. You didn't take it yesterday. She turned to face me fully. Without the phone between us, her expression was more naked. There was real anxiety there, but also something harder underneath. I called 3 boutiques, she said. Everything in my size is either awful or needs weeks of alterations. I don't have weeks. I have days. You know this. I do, I said. Then stop punishing me, she snapped. You made your point. You're upset. I get it. But this is my wedding. Don't destroy it over a guest list technicality. You call this a technicality, I said. He calls it being told he's good enough to sow your dream, but not good enough to watch it come true. She huffed. He's 17. He'll survive. I glanced toward the kitchen. My grandson stood at the edge of the doorway, half hidden, plate still in his hand, listening. Stop talking about me like I'm not here, he said softly. She turned, startled, as if she hadn't noticed him. I'm not saying you're not important, she said quickly. There will be lots of drunk people and I don't want to deal with any potential issues. Liam's family is particular. Particular how? I asked. She hesitated. Her eyes flicked to my grandson and then away. They're traditional, she muttered. Church people. They already think it's strange that a boy made the dress. If they see you there, It might cause conversations. The word hung thick between us. Conversations. My grandson set the plate down on the side table. The fork clinked against the porcelain. "So I'm a problem to hide," he said. No anger in his voice, just something hollow. "That's not what I said," she protested. "It's what you meant," I replied. She pressed her fingers to her temples. "Can we please not do this right now? I'm exhausted. I just need the dress. We don't have to agree on everything to be family." "Family doesn't ask you to erase your own," I said. Her jaw clenched. "Fine, then let's be practical. You paid for the fabric, right? Send me the receipt. I'll reimburse you. Consider that the end of it." "I didn't just buy fabric," I said. "He invested labor, skill, months of his life." "That was his gift," she shot back. "He said he wanted to do it as a present." "He thought he was giving it to someone who would stand beside him," I said, "not someone who would push him out of the room." She shook her head sharply. "This is going nowhere. Just name your price then, if that's what this is about." The room went very still. My grandson's eyes widened. "It's not about money," he said. "It is now," she said. "If you're refusing to honor your promise, at least let me buy the work you've already done. That's fair." His face flushed, hurt flaring across it like a sudden rash. I stepped between them slightly. "You want to turn his heart into an invoice?" I asked. "I want a solution," she said. "You're the one making it emotional." My phone buzzed again on the side table. A new message from an unknown number flashed briefly. "Hi, this is Liam. Can we talk about the dress situation?" I looked from the screen to my sister to my grandson and felt every eye in that room, seen and unseen, turn toward me, waiting to see whether I would sell, surrender, or stand. I picked up the phone and pressed call back, my hands steady, even as my heart hammered, and when a man answered with a calm, clipped, "Hello?" I realized this fight had just moved beyond my sister. I wasn't always a woman who stood her ground. There was a time I learned to swallow disappointment quietly, the way some women learn to hold their breath underwater until the danger passes. My life didn't break all at once. It cracked in slow, patient lines like porcelain under pressure, and by the time I realized those cracks were spreading, I was already raising a daughter alone at 26. The night my husband left is still something I remember in pieces, as if my mind could only bear to hold fragments. What I remember clearest is the empty chair at the kitchen table the next morning. The chair where he always tossed his jacket, the chair he pulled out with that lazy scrape of wood that used to signal home. That scrape never came again. My daughter was 7. I told her he'd left early for work, even though his coat wasn't on the hook by the door anymore. That hook, the single hook left empty for years, became the first anchor of my life after him. Every morning I would catch myself glancing at it, the way someone glances at a wound to see if it still bleeds. It did. But life doesn't stop for wounds. I took extra shifts at the diner, breakfast rush, lunch crowd, weekend evenings. My hands smelled of coffee grounds and frying oil for years, the scent soaking into my skin so deeply that even on my days off, I could still feel the echo of it. I'd come home tired, feet aching, hair smelling of grease, but my daughter would run to me with drawings clutched in her hand. She loved to draw dresses even back then, lines looping across the page in colors she insisted meant something. Pink for hope, blue for calm, yellow for joy. I taped them to the fridge, one after another, until they overlapped like scales. When she was 12, she asked about her father, really asked. I didn't lie anymore. "He left because he didn't know how to stay," I said. She didn't cry. She just stared at the empty chair that had never been filled again, and in that moment something in her face changed. A soft part hardened. A curious part closed. I tried to hold her close through her teenage years, but she kept slipping away, first through silence, then through rebellion, then through choices she refused to explain. By 19, she'd packed a suitcase and said she needed a life bigger than yours. That sentence still echoes sometimes, sharp, thoughtless, but unforgettable. A life bigger than mine. She found the man who would eventually give her a son, and for a while, I thought she had found something good. But good things don't always last in my family, or maybe we just never knew how to protect them. She left her son, my grandson, with me when he was barely 3. She said it was temporary. She said she needed to sort things out. She said she'd be back in a week. Weeks turned into months, months into years. And something unexpected happened. The hole my husband left in our home slowly reshaped itself around a small child with hair that curled at the ends and hands that clung to mine when he slept. The house didn't feel empty anymore. The fridge drawings changed, from my daughter's childhood sketches to his careful crayon lines of monsters and rockets and flowers he wasn't sure were flowers. By the time he turned 8, he found my old sewing kit, the one I kept in a tin with faded blue paint. He carried it around like treasure. One day, I found him stitching 2 scraps of fabric together, tongue between his teeth, the thread pulling into a crooked line. "It's a cape," he told me proudly. "For you." He tied it around my shoulders, a lopsided square of cloth that didn't even reach my waist. But when I looked in the mirror, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Someone had made something for me. Just for me. Not because it was required, not because I begged, not because tradition demanded it, but out of love. His sewing grew steadier as he grew older. He mended holes in his own pockets, then in my aprons, then in the tablecloth when it tore on Thanksgiving. By 12, he was altering thrift store clothes into new shapes. By 15, he was sketching dresses that reminded me of my daughter's childhood ones, but gentler, softer, as though he was repairing something she left behind. And then came the letters. When he was 10, I opened the storage box where I'd kept the few things my husband left behind: 2 shirts, a watch that didn't tick anymore, and a stack of unopened letters he'd sent after leaving. Letters I never had the courage to read. Letters that sat in the dark for years, paper aging but never spoken. My grandson found them once when I was sorting old boxes. He asked who they were from. "My past," I said, "a past that doesn't need opening." He nodded with that quiet understanding he always had, and he never asked again. Those letters became the second anchor of my life, not because of what they said, because I never read them, but because of what they didn't fix. Some wounds remain wounds. When my daughter finally drifted back into contact, text messages here and there, gossip shared through relatives, she treated motherhood like an incident, rather than a bond. She visited on birthdays if it was convenient. She never stayed long. She always looked at my grandson like he reminded her of something she wished she could forget. He never asked why she didn't love him the way he loved her. He only asked once why she didn't stay. "She doesn't know how," I told him, "but that's not your fault." He believed me, but softly, carefully, the way someone believes in something fragile. So our life became a rhythm: school, sewing, meals shared at the table where the empty chair remained, not as a reminder of loss, but as space we chose not to fill with false replacements. When he turned 17, my sister, my daughter, appeared surprisingly excited. She told him she wanted him to design her wedding dress. She said it with admiration, even enthusiasm, and I watched my grandson light up from the inside, pride blooming in him like a dawn I hadn't seen in years. He drew sketches at the same table where my husband once read the newspaper. He held fabric up to the window light, testing how it shimmered. He stayed up late, adjusting hems the way someone adjusts their hopes, carefully, deliberately. And for the first time in a long time, I thought maybe our family was learning to mend itself. I didn't realize how wrong I was until she told him he wasn't invited. The moment she said it, The moment the door closed behind her, every anchor of my past echoed at once. The empty chair, the letters, the single unused hook by the door, all the ways this family had learned to leave instead of love, all the ways I had learned to endure instead of break. And somewhere deep inside me, a decision formed, not loud, not dramatic, just solid. I would not let her pass that pattern on to him. I had survived abandonment. He would not survive erasure the same way, not if I could help it, not again, not him. The first sign that things were slipping further came in a place that should have felt harmless, a cafe, bright as a hospital waiting room, with sunlight bouncing off the tiles and cold metal chairs that seemed designed to keep people from getting comfortable. My sister was already there when I arrived, sitting with two women I didn't recognize. Their Bibles were stacked neatly beside their drinks, pages edged in gold. They looked like women who had already decided the kind of family they approved of. She didn't wave me over, just nodded toward a chair slightly pulled back from the table, not close enough to be included, not far enough to be excused. I sat because not sitting would have been a scene, and she hated scenes more than cruelty. "This is my sister," she said to them, "the one I told you about." One woman smiled politely. The other didn't bother. "She's been under a lot of stress," my sister added, her voice light, almost sympathetic, a tone meant for strangers, not blood. I folded my hands in my lap. The sunlight hit the dress box beside me, turning the gold lettering into something almost painful to look at. "I'm not stressed," I said. "I'm protecting my grandson." "Oh, of course," the first woman said, smiling wider. "Weddings can be overwhelming. Emotions run high. Peace is important." Peace. The way she said it made it sound like a muzzle. My sister sipped her drink without looking at me. "I was explaining the situation," she told them, "how she's been holding the dress because of complications." Complications. The women nodded with interest, like they were hearing about a misbehaving appliance. One of them leaned forward slightly. "Your daughter mentioned your grandson is sensitive. Some kids really struggle at events with loud music and alcohol. It might be better for him to avoid overstimulation." Kids like him. Avoid overstimulation. Better for him. Every word wrapped in velvet, every meaning sharpened like a needle. I felt heat crawl up my throat. My fingers curled around the edge of the table, not tightly, just enough to keep me from floating away. My sister didn't correct them, didn't say his name, didn't claim him. She just let the softness of their voices erase him inch by inch. The conversation drifted to wedding colors, floral arrangements, seating charts. I sat there, half included, half excluded, listening to them build a world he wasn't welcome in. They laughed lightly at things I couldn't hear. My sister spoke freely, comfortably, as if she had no ties to the boy who spent months sewing her dreams into lace. When she finally stood to leave, she said, "See? That wasn't so hard." As if I had been the one making it difficult. As if my grandson had been a stain she'd spent the morning trying to scrub out. Later that afternoon, she texted me to drop off a few garments she needed adjusted. Not the dress, just small pieces she didn't trust herself to fix. It felt like a test disguised as an errand. When I arrived at her fiancé's house, he opened the door only halfway, keeping the chain latched. The faint smell of cologne drifted out. His expression didn't hide the fact that he wished someone else had shown up. "Oh," he said, "it's you." I nodded, lifting the garments. "She said to bring these." He didn't remove the chain, didn't ask me inside. Just extended his hand through the gap, a narrow, controlled space, a boundary drawn in metal. "Just pass them here." "It's cold out," I said. "Could I come in for a moment?" "No," he replied. "The house is a bit of a mess." But behind him, I saw clean countertops, polished floors, everything arranged neatly. No mess, no sign of chaos, only a door he didn't want me to step through. I handed him the garments. He flinched when my fingers brushed his. From deeper inside, my sister called, "Who is it?" "Your sister," he answered. "She brought the clothes." "Oh," she said, the sound floating toward the door like a small dismissal. "Tell her she didn't need to come inside." "I already did." They shared a quiet laugh, small enough to pretend it wasn't meant for my ears, loud enough to make sure it was. He closed the door without goodbye. I stood for a moment on the porch, winter air slipping under my coat like a hand searching for ribs. The house behind the door felt warm. The space where I stood felt like a hallway between worlds, one I wasn't allowed to enter anymore. That evening, she gathered the family on a video call. I didn't know it was happening until my cousin sent the link with a hesitant, "You might want to join." When I entered, the screen filled with tiled faces, small squares of relatives lit by warm lamps and cool screens. Some smiled at first, unaware of the tension. Some looked uneasy already. My sister was centered in her frame, well lit and composed, as if she'd practiced the angle. "I was just telling everyone what's been going on," she said sweetly, "about how things have gotten complicated." My mother nodded, her voice soft but sharp. "Your sister is just overwhelmed. She's dealing with too much. It's understandable." My chest tightened. "I'm not overwhelmed," I said. "I'm asking for fairness." Static clipped the edges of my words. Someone frowned, as if I'd spoken too loudly. "She's feeling defensive," my sister murmured to the group. "Let's be gentle." "I'm right here," I said. "You don't have to cushion their reactions like I'm fragile." My mother sighed. "No one thinks you're fragile. We just want to help you calm down." Calm down. The universal phrase used to make a woman feel unreasonable. I saw my grandson in the reflection of the screen behind me, standing in the doorway listening. His expression was closed, guarded. Too old for 17, too young for this. My sister's fiancé leaned into the frame. Is that her grandson? The one who's been causing all the... She muted him. Muted. Not corrected. A choice louder than any insult. Faces shifted in their squares, some sympathetic, some uncomfortable, some tired of a story they didn't understand. No one asked about him. No one asked how he felt. They only wanted the wedding to proceed without disruption, and he, apparently, was a disruption. When the call ended, the room felt darker than before. The lamp cast a thin slice of light across the dress box in the corner, highlighting its edges like a spotlight waiting for a performer who had been cut from the script. My grandson stepped closer. "I shouldn't have seen that," he whispered. "You shouldn't have been made to," I replied. His hands trembled slightly. He hid them behind his back. It wasn't anger in his eyes. It was something quieter. Something that sounded like defeat when spoken too softly. Later that night, the house settled into silence, the kind that presses instead of holding. I sat at the dining table, fingers tracing the seam of the dress box, feeling every stitch he had poured into it without touching the fabric inside. The phone buzzed once, then again, her name lighting the screen, as if she could sense the humiliation hadn't been enough yet, as if there was more she needed to take before she felt whole. And for the first time in a long time, I realized I was not sinking. I was hardening. The version of myself who used to swallow hurt quietly was fading, dissolving like ink in water. What remained was sharper, steadier, ready. Because under all the layers of shame, silence, erasure, and careful cruelty, something in me had begun to push back. I picked up the phone, feeling the shift settle in my chest like the first breath before a storm. The moment the line connected, I didn't speak. I let her fill the silence, because silence had been her weapon for weeks, and now it was mine. "I've been trying to reach you," she said quickly. "You didn't have to storm out of the call earlier. People were worried." Her tone was light, practiced, sugar dusted over steel. "I didn't storm out," I replied. "I just chose not to stay somewhere I wasn't welcome." A beat of quiet followed, thin, brittle. I could almost hear her recalibrating, deciding which version of herself to use on me. "Well," she said gently, "that's your interpretation. I think you're being a little dramatic. We all just want things to go smoothly." Smooth. Another word used to flatten people. My hand rested on the dress box. And for the first time, the weight of it didn't feel like grief. It felt like truth, something undeniable. "You've made a choice," I said, "and I've made mine." She exhaled sharply. "Are you really still on about the guest list? It's not personal. It's a wedding, not a daycare." A flush crept up the back of my neck. I closed my eyes for a moment, grounding myself. I wouldn't give her what she wanted, a burst of anger she could use to paint herself as the victim. "It became personal," I said quietly. "The moment you asked a child to build your dream for months, then told him he wasn't worthy to stand in the room where you'd wear it." Silence again. Only this time it didn't cut me. It cut her. I heard her breathing shift, a slight tremor, a wobble in the mask. "You're twisting things," she snapped. "Please don't turn this into some big emotional—" "He cried," I said. "The night he found out. He thought he'd done something wrong." Something in my voice made her pause. The truth, maybe, or the calmness, which she couldn't argue against. "Well," she said after a long moment, "maybe he shouldn't be so sensitive." I opened my eyes, and there it was, the click, the shift, the snap. Something inside me aligned itself with a clarity I hadn't felt in years, a straightening of the spine, a lifting of the ribs, a quiet awareness that I had nothing left to lose in her eyes, and everything left to reclaim in mine. "You don't get to decide what he feels," I said, "and you don't get to use him when it's convenient, then discard him when it isn't." "Oh my God," she murmured, annoyed. "You are making this harder than it needs to be." "No," I said. "I'm making it real." Her breath caught. Just a fraction. But I heard it. "I need the dress," she said finally, voice tightening. "We're too close to the wedding for this." "And he needed to matter," I answered. "You didn't give him that." "This is my wedding," she hissed. "You're ruining everything." "No," I said again, steady and soft. "I'm done letting you ruin him." The line went silent, long enough that I wondered if she'd hung up, long enough that I could hear my grandson's footsteps in the hallway, the soft rhythm of a boy trying not to intrude. "What are you saying?" she whispered. I looked at the dress box. I saw every stitch he had sewn. Every night he'd stayed up reworking a lace motif she criticized. Every piece of hope he'd tucked into those seams. Every part of him she had erased on her guest list. And for the first time, I didn't feel sorrow. I felt certainty. "I'm saying no," I said. A soft gasp slipped through the speaker, delicate and sharp. You can't do that." "I just did." Her breath shook. "I'll tell everyone what you're doing." "You already have," I replied, "and some of them see you clearly now." "This isn't fair," she choked out. "It's honest," I said. For a moment, neither of us breathed. Then a small sound, almost a whimper, escaped her. Not the sound of someone hurt, the sound of someone caught, someone who had run out of excuses and found only themselves waiting on the other side. "I don't understand why you're turning on me," she whispered. "I'm not turning," I said. "I'm standing." The line stayed open. Her silence was no longer a blade. It was a mirror. And I realized something else in that moment, something that settled into me with the quiet weight of justice beginning to rise. I wasn't afraid of her anymore, not of her tone, not of her disappointment, not of her rewriting of history, not of the family divide she pretended was accidental. She had less power than she believed, and I had more than I remembered. "I'll call you tomorrow," she said finally, brittle as cracked glass. "We can talk again when you're calmer." "I don't need to be calmer," I replied. "I just need to be done." And I hung up, not out of anger, but out of completion. My grandson stepped into the doorway. His face was cautious, unsure of the version of me he would find. "Are you okay?" he asked. I looked at him. This boy who had stitched beauty into a world that refused him a chair at its table. "I am now," I said. But beneath those words, something deeper thrummed in my chest. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning. And tomorrow, she would learn what it meant when I finally stopped bending. The next morning, the house felt different. Nothing had changed physically. The same scuffed floor, the same old clock ticking in the hallway, the same rays of pale light sneaking through the thin curtains. But there was a stillness in me I hadn't felt before. Not numbness, not shock. Just a quiet decision sitting where fear used to live. My grandson came into the kitchen barefoot, hair sticking up, eyes swollen from sleep. He looked at me first, then at the dress box on the table, as if measuring which one was more likely to disappear. "Did she call again?" he asked. "Not yet," I said. He nodded slowly, like that answer wasn't good or bad, just information. He put bread in the toaster and stood there, watching it, fingers drumming lightly on the counter. "Do you regret it?" he said after a moment. Telling her no. I stirred sugar into my coffee. The spoon clinked softly against the mug. "No," I said. "I regret not saying it sooner." His shoulders loosened a fraction. "So, what happens now?" "Now," I said. "We stop reacting and start preparing." He pulled out a chair and sat down. "Preparing for what?" "For her to spin this story until I barely recognize myself in it," I said. "And for us to have the truth ready when she does." His eyes sharpened, curiosity edging out hurt. "What does that look like?" I reached for my phone. The screen lit up, rows of messages stacked on top of each other like layers of dust. I scrolled through the chat history. Her words, my replies, the cousins' screenshots, the group gossip. "It looks like keeping receipts," I said. "Not just the kind you get at the store." I forwarded him the cousin's message, the one that said she'd been calling me unstable and claiming he was the problem. His jaw clenched as he read. "She really said that?" he whispered. "Yes," I said, "and she'll keep saying it. That's why we're going to gather what's real, before her version of things spreads so far it starts to sound like the only one." He was quiet for a few seconds. Then, "What can I do?" "You can start by writing down everything," I said. "When she asked you to make the dress, how many fittings you did, what she promised, what she said when she told you you're not invited, every detail you remember." "Like a statement?" he asked. "Like a record," I said. "So you never have to question whether it really happened the way you feel it did." He swallowed and nodded. I watched him go to his room and come back with his sketchbook. Not the one full of designs. Another one. This one had ripped corners and smudged pencil lines from old ideas. He sat at the table and opened to a blank page. The first words he wrote were shaky. His hand steadied as he went on. While he wrote, I opened a new note on my own phone and began listing things that might matter later. Dates of her messages. The first time she said no minors. The way she referenced church people. The call where she said he was too sensitive. The family video where she painted me as unstable. Not to weaponize them, to protect us from erasure. The toaster popped. He ignored it. After a while, he looked up. "Is this overkill?" he asked. "It's just a wedding." "It's not just a wedding," I said. "It's the moment she decided you were good enough to work for her but not good enough to stand beside her. That's the line we're drawing around." He stared at his words again. "Okay," he said. "Then I want it written down." Around lunchtime, I called a friend of mine, Rosa, from the years I worked at the diner. She was the one person in my life who had seen me at my lowest and never used it against me. She answered on the second ring. "You only call me in the middle of the day when something big is happening," she said. "So what blew up?" I told her everything, not in one breath but in careful pieces. The The proposal, the dress, the nights he stayed up sewing, the guest list, the rules, the way my sister spoke about him to others. When I finished, there was a quiet sound on her end, like a hand hitting a table softly. "She used him," Rosa said, "and now she wants to use you." I told her no, I said, and I'm not going back on it. "Good," she said. "So what do you need from me?" I hesitated. 2 things, maybe. First, I need someone outside the family who knows the full story in case people start twisting it. "You just gave me that," she said. "Consider it filed." Second, I continued, I need to know what the dress is really worth, not just fabric cost, his labor, the design, all of it. "You thinking of selling it?" she asked. "I'm thinking of treating it like what it is," I said. "Not a favor she's owed because she shares our blood." She exhaled. "I know a woman who does custom gowns downtown. She owes me a favor. Send me pictures of the dress. Close-ups of the seams and details. I'll show them to her. See what kind of number she puts on it." I looked at the box. "I'll have him take them when he's ready," I said. "And if this turns into something uglier," she added, "if she starts making noise, I'll be the one to say what I heard from you today. In my own name, not hiding behind gossip." A little warmth spread in my chest at that. "Thank you," I said. "That boy has already been taught too many lessons the hard way," she said. "If this is the one where he learns his work has value, then fine. Let's teach it properly." In the afternoon, my mother called again. I let it go to voicemail. When it pinged, I listened, phone held away from my ear like I was handling something fragile. Her voice was tight. "I talked to her," she said. "She's distraught. You won't like this. But I told her if she can't fix things with you, she should just tell people you backed out last minute. No one needs all the messy details. It's better if the family thinks you had a moment and she handled it with grace." I paused the message, my stomach twisting. Handled it with grace. My erasure. Packaged politely. When I hit play again, she was still talking. "This is your last chance to make this right before everyone remembers you as the problem. Bring her the dress. Let this go." I saved the voicemail, not out of spite, out of self-defense. My grandson walked in as I finished. "Was that Grandma?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "Was she on your side at all?" I thought about the message. The word grace laid like a veil over manipulation. The way she'd chosen image over honesty. "No," I said. "She's on hers." He nodded. Like he'd expected that answer but wanted to be wrong. He set his notebook on the table. "I wrote everything I remember," he said, sliding it toward me, "from the day she asked to the night she told me I'm not invited." I skimmed the pages. Descriptions of fittings, texts asking him to change something at midnight, the way she once said, "You're saving me so much money, you have no idea." At the bottom of one page, almost cramped in the margin, he'd written, "I thought this meant she was proud of me." I put my hand over his for a moment. "We're going to keep this safe," I said. "For what?" he asked. "For when people try to tell you it wasn't that bad," I said, "or that you're imagining it, or that she didn't mean it. This is for you as much as anyone else." He took a small breath and nodded. By evening, we were sitting together on the floor of his room with the dress laid out carefully on the bed. He stood on a chair, phone in hand, angling for the right shots. He photographed the stitching, the bodice, the intricate lace along the back, the invisible zipper he'd spent an entire Saturday perfecting. "Make sure you get the inside seams, too," I said. "People who know what they're doing will want to see that." He smiled faintly. "You sound like you've done this before." "I've never done this before," I said, "but I've watched the world put a price on everything except the people who make it. I'm tired of that." He took the last photo and climbed down. We sat shoulder to shoulder, scrolling through the images. Each one felt like proof that he existed, that his care left a visible mark on the world. I sent a batch to Rosa. Within minutes, 3 dots appeared on the screen as she forwarded them. A little later, another message came from her. Her friend says this would easily go for a high number in her shop. More if you brand it as bespoke. She actually asked who the designer is. I handed the phone to my grandson. His eyes widened at the number. "That much?" he breathed. "That much," I said. I never thought." He trailed off, blinking quickly. "I thought it was just, something I did for family." "You did," I said, "and they treated it like it was nothing. That doesn't make it nothing." He stared at the digits again. "If we told her this, she'd say we're trying to rob her," he said. "She'd say we owe her," I corrected. "That's the story she knows how to tell." Another message came in, this time from a different cousin. "Hey. She's saying you're blackmailing her with the dress, that you're demanding money to let it go. Wanted you to know what's being said." My grandson exhaled, the sound part laugh, part disbelief. "Of course she is," I typed back. "Thanks for telling me. We're not asking her for a cent, just not giving it to someone who treats him like a shadow." This cousin replied, "For what it's worth, I'd pay to see her walk down the aisle in something off the rack after everything she's done." I didn't answer that, but a small, guilty smile tugged at the corner of my mouth. Not revenge, just balance. As the sun dipped, the house grew dim. I turned on a lamp in the living room, the warm light casting a gentle glow over the table where the dress box now sat open, fabric shimmering softly. It looked almost like water in low light, folding and pooling in quiet waves. I folded it back into the box with careful hands, not like something I was giving away, like something I was protecting. "Are you scared?" my grandson asked from the doorway. "Yes," I said honestly, "but not of her." "What then?" "Of what happens to you if we let this pass," I said. "Of what it teaches you about what you deserve." He leaned against the frame. "So what's the plan?" "The plan," I said, "is simple. We don't chase her. We don't explain ourselves to people who've already chosen not to listen. We keep the dress. We keep our records. We answer only when it matters." "And when will it matter?" he asked. I looked at him. "When she tries to stand in front of the world in something she got by erasing you." He nodded slowly. "And if she shows up in that dress anyway?" "She won't," I said. "Because she can't." I closed the lid. We stood there for a moment, listening to the quiet settle around the decision, solid and heavy and strangely peaceful. Then my phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't my sister. It was an unknown number tied to the venue. "Hello, this is the coordinator for Saturday's wedding. We've been informed of a dress dispute and possible disruption. We need to talk." I stared at the message, feeling the next line of battle forming. Not in our house, not in our group chats, but on a stage she cared about more than she had ever cared about us. I handed the phone to my grandson. "Looks like she's getting the venue involved now," I said. His eyes scanned the message, uncertainty flickering under the surface. "What are you going to say?" he asked. I took the phone back, my fingers steady. "That depends," I said, opening the keyboard, "on whether they want the full story or the version she's already rehearsed for them." And as I began to type my reply, I realized that whatever happened next wouldn't be quiet anymore. The coordinator's office was smaller than I expected. It sat just off the main hallway of the venue, a windowless room with beige walls and a single fluorescent light that hummed faintly overhead. A metal filing cabinet stood in the corner, a calendar with neat blocks of names pinned on the wall beside it. It smelled faintly of coffee and hairspray, the kind of room where problems were supposed to be handled quietly. I sat in the only chair they'd given me, a hard plastic one opposite the coordinator's desk. She was a woman in her 50s with tired eyes and a professional smile. The kind of smile that said she'd seen every kind of drama and would rather not add another to her list. My grandson sat to my right on a folding chair they'd dragged in from the hallway, his knee bouncing up and down, fingers twisting the edge of his jacket. He'd dressed nicely, dark pants, a pressed shirt, not because he expected to be allowed to stay, because he wanted to walk into the truth with dignity. Outside the office door, I could hear muffled noises, Laughter, footsteps, a burst of music as someone tested the speakers. The wedding was close, too close for them. The coordinator glanced at the clock. "They'll be here in a minute," she said. "I appreciate you coming early." "I didn't want anyone saying I ran from this," I answered. She folded her hands on the desk. "Just so we're clear," she said carefully. "My job is to make sure today goes smoothly for the couple and for the venue. I'm not here to take sides in family disputes, but I was told there's an issue involving the dress and a potential disruption." Disruption. That was the word my sister must have used. "There's no disruption," I said. "There's a boundary." The coordinator's eyes softened just a little. "You can explain your side when everyone gets here. I'd like us all to hear the same information at the same time." My grandson exhaled slowly. The fluorescent light cast a pale sheen on his hair, flattening the color. He looked washed out in here, smaller than he was. The door opened without a knock. My sister stepped in first, followed by her fiancé. My mother came in behind them, clutching her purse to her chest like a shield. The fiancé closed the door and leaned against it, as if to make sure no one else could wander in and hear. My sister was already in full bridal hair and makeup, though she wore a silk robe instead of the dress. Her eyes went straight to me, then to my grandson, then to the empty space beside him where a box could have been. "Where is it?" she demanded. No greeting, no pretense. "Tell me you brought it." I didn't answer her. Not yet. The coordinator gestured to the chairs. "Why don't we all sit?" My sister took the seat opposite me, shoulders stiff, jaw clenched. Her fiancé stood behind her, a hand on the back of her chair. My mother settled into the extra folding chair beside my grandson, but she didn't look at him. The coordinator glanced between us. "So," she said, "from what I understand, there's a disagreement about the wedding gown and a concern about whether it will be provided today." "It's not a disagreement," my sister cut in. "She's holding it hostage because she's upset my wedding is child-free." "It's not child-free," I said. "It's him-free." Her eyes flashed. "Same thing." My grandson flinched, the smallest movement. My mother's hand twitched in her lap, but she said nothing. The coordinator held up a hand. "One at a time, please, ma'am." She turned to me. "Did you agree to provide the dress for today?" "I agreed to support my grandson while he designed and sewed it," I said. "I paid for the fabric. I watched him work. I watched her praise him to his face and erase him from her guest list behind his back." "This isn't about that," my sister snapped. "This is about the dress." "It's always been about him," I said quietly. "The dress is just where your choices became visible." Her fiancé stepped forward slightly. "We're not here to be analyzed. We're here because she needs the gown she was promised." My grandson's voice came out soft but clear. "I was never paid," he said. "She told me it was a gift." "Because you offered," my sister retorted, turning on him for the first time, as if she'd forgotten he could speak. "You said you wanted to do it as my wedding present. Nobody forced you." He swallowed. "I thought I was giving it to someone who wanted me there." She rolled her eyes. "This is exactly what I mean. He's making it emotional." The coordinator watched them, expression unreadable. "Let me ask a direct question," the coordinator said. "Did you, at any point, inform him clearly that he would not be invited to the wedding?" "I said no minors," my sister answered. "From the beginning. Because there's going to be alcohol, dancing, and I don't want to be responsible for what some people might consider inappropriate for children." "I'm 17, he said, "not 7. She ignored that. My mother shifted, finally speaking. "We all know he's different," she said softly. "More sensitive. It might have been overwhelming for him." My grandson's face tightened, but he didn't look away from them. The coordinator wrote something down on a pad. I wasn't sure if it was notes about the conversation or a grocery list. Either way, she was listening. "May I ask," the coordinator said to my sister, "why the dress was commissioned from him, specifically?" "Because he's talented," my sister said. "Look, I'm not saying he's not gifted. I've told everyone he's gifted. But this is my wedding. There are expectations. Liam's family is particular. Traditional, her fiancé added. We don't want any confusion about roles. A young man in that environment, with that style, it could lead to questions. This is supposed to be a sacred day. There it was, finally said out loud, not fully, not bluntly, but enough. My grandson stared at him, eyes wide, lips pressed together. He didn't ask what that style meant. He'd heard enough hints, enough asides, enough laughter behind closed doors to fill in the blank. I felt something in me go very still. You were fine using his talent, I said, as long as he stayed invisible. That's not fair, my sister snapped. I posted his work. I bragged about it. I told people how lucky I am to have a designer in the family. As long as they didn't have to sit next to him, I replied. The coordinator cleared her throat. Again, my concern here is whether there is a dress. There is a dress, I said. There always has been. The question is whether she deserves to wear it. My sister slammed her hands on the desk. The sound bounced off the cramped walls. It's my wedding dress, she said. I deserve it because I'm the bride, because I'm family. I slipped my phone from my pocket, unlocked it, and set it gently on the desk between us. Family, I repeated. Interesting word. On the screen, I opened the voicemail from my mother, tapped play, and let the room fill with her own voice. I told her if she can't fix things with you, she should just tell people you backed out last minute. No one needs all the messy details. It's better if the family thinks you had a moment and she handled it with grace. My mother's face drained of color as she heard herself. I stopped the recording there. The coordinator's eyebrows rose slightly. My mother tried to recover. That was taken out of... It was taken exactly where you left it, I said. In my phone, in reality. You were ready to let her rewrite me as unstable, so she wouldn't have to say out loud what she did to him. My sister glared at our mother, then at me. That doesn't change the fact that you promised... I didn't promise you my silence, I said. I promised him I wouldn't let you use and discard him. My grandson shifted in his chair. I could feel his gaze on me, like a hand at my back. The coordinator looked at my sister. Did you, at any point, offer to include him if the dress was provided? She asked. Silence. Then my sister said, That's not the point. It is now, I said. I opened another screen, messages my cousin had sent. The ones where my sister called me unstable, accused my grandson of causing trouble, framed herself as the victim. I didn't read them all. I read enough. That's what you've been telling people, I said. That I'm blackmailing you, that he's the problem, that this is about a dress. It's not. My sister's face flushed, then paled. Her fiancé's jaw tightened. You're airing private family conversations in front of a stranger, he said. Do you realize how inappropriate that is? You dragged a stranger into this, I said, nodding toward the coordinator, when you told her I might cause a scene, when you framed me as a risk. All I'm doing is filling in the part you left out. Why? The coordinator spoke carefully. I don't need every detail of your history, she said, but I do need to understand if there's any risk of someone interrupting the ceremony. There's no risk, I said. I won't be in the pews. Neither will he. My grandson's head turned toward me sharply. You're not going? He asked. I kept my eyes on my sister. I won't sit in a room that pretends this is normal, that pretends he's not missing. I've already lived that story once. The memory of the empty chair at my kitchen table all those years ago flickered at the edge of my mind. I swallowed it back down, just enough to stay present. My sister leaned forward, voice shaking now. So that's it? You're boycotting my wedding and stealing my dress? I'm keeping what he made, I said. You're the one who chose to lose us. Her hands curled into fists on the desk. You can't do this to me. I'm not doing anything to you, I replied. I'm finally refusing to let you do this to him. The coordinator broke in again. Just to clarify, ma'am, she looked at me. You did not bring the gown today?" "No," I said. My sister let out a strangled sound, somewhere between a sob and a growl. "You're going to walk me down the aisle in what? A cheap rental? Do you have any idea how humiliating—" I met her eyes and felt something sharp rise in me, something that had been dull for too long. "Humiliating," I said. "That's an interesting choice of word from a woman who told her own nephew he was bad for her image." The room went very quiet. Outside, a burst of laughter filtered through the wall, then faded. The fluorescent light hummed on. My sister's lips trembled. Tears gathered at the corners of her eyes, turning them glossy. "You're supposed to be on my side," she whispered. "You're my mother." The last word wasn't aimed at me. It was aimed at my mother, who had stayed mostly quiet, watching this unfold like a show she couldn't turn off. My mother stared at her hands, then at me, then at my grandson. For once, there was no easy sentence waiting on her tongue. He looked at her with an expression I'd never seen on his face before. Not hope, not longing, just curiosity, as if he wanted to see, finally, who she would be when there was no one left to perform for. "I'm on the side of what's right," my mother said at last, voice small, "and I don't know if this is right." It wasn't much, but it was more than any of us had expected. My sister recoiled like she'd been struck. "You're all against me," she cried. "Over what? An extra chair on a guest list?" My grandson finally spoke again. "It was never about a chair," he said quietly. "It was about whether you wanted me there at all." His words landed in the room like a dropped glass, shattering the last illusion that this was just about logistics. He looked at her with steady eyes. "You don't," he added. "You proved that, so you don't get what I made." There it was, the line that froze the room, not mine, his. A 17-year-old boy in a cramped office, claiming his own worth in front of the people who had tried so hard to define it for him. My sister stared at him, teary and furious and exposed. "You will regret this," she whispered. "Maybe," I said. "But you're the one who has to walk down that aisle with everyone wondering why the woman who bragged about a custom gown is wearing something she found in a rush." Her fiancé spoke up sharply. "We'll find another dress. She doesn't need anything from you." "That's finally true," I said. "She doesn't." The coordinator cleared her throat. "From the venue's perspective," she said slowly, "I need to know if there's any danger of someone interrupting the ceremony, making a scene, or approaching the couple in a way that could cause distress." "There won't be," I said. "We won't be there." My sister blinked. "What?" "We're leaving," I said. "We came to tell the truth. You can get married however you like, but you don't get us in the photos you'll frame as evidence of a family you chose not to have." Tears spilled over now, streaking her makeup. "You're punishing me," she whispered. "No," I answered. "I'm letting you live with the consequences of your choices. That's not punishment. That's adulthood." I stood. My legs shook a little, but not from fear. From the weight of years I was finally setting down. My grandson rose too. The coordinator watched us, then looked at my sister. "I'll give you a few minutes before we start seating guests," she said. "We'll adjust the timeline if needed." My sister buried her face in her hands. Her fiancé put an arm around her shoulders, but his eyes never left us. There was no warmth in his gaze. As I reached for the doorknob, my mother spoke again, voice rough. "You're really going?" she asked. I turned back to her. "I spent my life staring at empty chairs and closed doors," I said. "I'm done pretending they're full of love." Her eyes glistened. My grandson put a hand on my arm, a small, grounding weight. We stepped out of the office into the hallway where warm light spilled onto polished floors and faint music played in the distance. The door closed softly behind us. The guests were arriving. The ceremony would begin. The photos would be taken. And for the first time, I realized that the real question wasn't whether we belonged there. It was whether we ever had. We didn't speak much on the drive home. My grandson sat beside me, looking out the window as the winter light slid across his face in soft, shifting bands. His fingers rested on his knee, tapping lightly now and then, not from nerves, more like a rhythm settling inside him after too many days spent bracing for someone else's disappointment. When we pulled into the driveway, the house felt strangely warm. Not physically. The heater was old and the air was always a degree colder than we wanted, but something about the quiet, the stillness, the absence of other people's demands. It felt like a room finally opening after years of being locked shut. We went inside. The first thing I saw was the empty chair at the kitchen table. It had always been a sore place in my heart, a reminder of everyone who'd chosen not to sit with us over the years. The people who drifted, the ones who excused themselves, the ones who showed up only when something was needed from me. I used to stare at that chair and feel the ache of what wasn't there. But today, it didn't feel hollow. It felt honest. My grandson hung his jacket over the back of the chair, letting it drape naturally, like he wasn't making a statement. Just being himself in a space where he no longer had to shrink. He walked to the counter and touched the rim of a mug as if grounding himself in the small familiarity of home. "She's probably walking down the aisle by now," he murmured. "Maybe," I said, "not in the dress she wanted." He let out a small breath that wasn't quite a laugh. "Do you think she'll hate me forever?" "No," I answered. "She'll hate the truth. That's different." He nodded, running his thumb along the edge of the mug. The silence between us felt soft, not weighted. "You know," he said, "I thought I'd feel worse today, but I don't." "That's because you didn't lose anything," I said. "You just stopped giving something that was never valued." His shoulders eased. A quiet acceptance settled over the room. After a while, I lifted the dress box from the table and set it on the empty chair. The lid opened with a soft sigh of fabric. The gown glimmered faintly in the afternoon light. Beautiful, untouched, exactly what he'd made it to be. "You could sell it someday," I said, "or keep it, or turn it into something new. Whatever you choose, it won't be wasted." He stepped closer, looking at the lace with a calm I hadn't seen in weeks. "Maybe I'll save it," he said. "Maybe it can belong to someone who actually wants me in the room." I felt something in my chest loosen, not relief, more like release, a letting go of the versions of myself that used to cling to the hope that family would fix itself if I just stayed quiet long enough. Silence stretched, warm and unhurried. "Do you think she'll ever apologize?" he asked. "People who confuse love with entitlement don't apologize," I said gently. "They rewrite, they deny, they blame. Apologies feel like surrender to them." He absorbed that with a slow nod. "So what do we do now?" "We live," I said, without asking her permission. A soft knock sounded at the door then, unexpected but not sharp enough to be alarming. When I opened it, my cousin stood there, wrapped in a coat, cheeks rosy from the cold. "I drove by the venue," she said, stepping inside. "People were whispering. They said the dress wasn't there. She was furious." "I'm sure she was," I said. "But you two did the right thing," she continued. "Some of us were waiting for someone in this family to finally stop letting her get away with everything. It just turned out to be you." Her words didn't feel like victory. They felt like confirmation, like a truth that had been waiting in the wings, finally allowed onto the stage. She stayed for a cup of tea, then left. The house settled again into peaceful quiet. My grandson sat at the table sketching, pencil moving slowly, freely, unbothered by deadlines or demands. I watched him for a long moment, realizing he looked different in the light now. Not smaller, not excluded, not erased, present. When the sun dipped lower and the room turned golden for a short, tender moment, he looked up at me. "Thank you," he said, "for choosing me." "I didn't choose you," I replied softly. I finally stopped choosing people who never chose us. He smiled, and something in that smile felt like the beginning of a better chapter. Not loud, not triumphant, just steady. The kind of beginning that doesn't need permission. I glanced again at the empty chair, the one that had carried so many ghosts for so many years. Today, it didn't look like a symbol of who wasn't there. It looked like a place waiting for someone worthy to sit in it. And for the first time, I understood that the chair had never been the problem. It was the people I kept pulling it out for. The empty chair used to remind me of everything I'd lost, but today it feels different. It feels like a space I no longer give away to those who don't treasure it. If any part of my story touched something in you, tell me. Sometimes speaking our truth is how we learn where we finally belong.